Spheres with Hannah Becker. Today's conversation promises to be an insightful one with remarkable guests. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a regular listener, we're so glad you're here. Our goal is to bring you closer to the innovative leaders and thinkers shaping our future. And today we are thrilled to welcome Patrick J. Murphy. Patrick has served our nation in one role or another as a soldier, as America's first Iraq war veteran elected to the U.S. Congress, and as the 32nd Undersecretary of the Army. Today, as an entrepreneur and advocate, Patrick harnesses the power of the public, private, nonprofit sectors to help veterans find jobs, start businesses, and secure quality healthcare and mental health services. I've admired Patrick's career for many years, and I'm so excited to have him on the show. Welcome to Tipping Spears, Patrick.
Hannah, it's great to be with you. I know you're calling in. You're doing this from the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. It's great to be with you. So, by the way, I spent some time in Charlottesville nearby, and so I'm a big fan of the Long family. So Howie Long was one of the greatest NFL football players. He played at Villanova, which is here in suburban Philadelphia. I'm calling in from obviously Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where I live, raised my kids. And then his son Chris Long was a defensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm a big fan. He helped us win our first Super Bowl ever. I was at that game. So just a great family. And Hannah, thank you for you and your husband for your service to our nation during these defining moments. So honored to be on.
Well, thank you. Well, Patrick, I want to start from the beginning. Can you tell us where your story begins?
Hannah, it's not that exciting. I mean, listen, I grew up youngest of three in a row house in Northeast Philadelphia. So it's a very blue collar part of Philly, tough neighborhood. A row house, we shared a step with our next door neighbor. And my father, though, my mother and father ingrained in us, the three of us, about serving basically our community, our church, and our country. So our community, doing things like shoveling the steps after a snowstorm or cutting lawns for our elderly neighbors. Our church, I was proudly, my highest rank ever was as the 1987 Alta Boy of the Year, serving our church and then and our country. My grandfather served in the Navy in the Pacific in World War II. My father served in the Navy, enlisted during Vietnam. My two uncles served in the Army in Vietnam. And my brother and I both did 2 combat deployments. I did 2 in the Army, and he did with the Air Force. And for me, it's just about living the values that the Bible talks about having a servant's heart, about giving back to those that were, like we say in Northeast Philadelphia, having a row house mentality, caring about the people on your left and your right, and knowing that we're all in this together.
What first sparked your interest in serving in the military?
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know. I'm embarrassed to admit this. I grew up in Philadelphia. It was the home most years of the Army Navy game. I didn't know the Army Navy game was 2 different colleges. I didn't understand it because, we come from a listed side of the house. West Point versus the Naval Academy. And again, I went on to go teach at West Point. But for me, when I went to the Army, my roommate, he said, "Hey, Murph, are you tracking this Army ROTC? They're signing people up, and you can earn a scholarship, and you can rappel off the side of a building in the mountains." And I was like, "What?" And so we both looked into it. We both signed up at age 19. We took the military science classes. And for those young people who are listening, you could first do Army ROTC or ROTC first without even committing, or what we call contracting. But we both fell in love with it. We were both athletes, student athletes at the college, and we just fell in love. We went away that summer to Fort Knox, Kentucky. We both earned scholarships, and then we were both commissioned as Army officers. And it's funny because he is still one of my best friends. We share the same birthday, but he was like, "I'm going to do 20 years, etc." And I was kind of like, "Well, we'll see. I'm the captain of the hockey team, and I was in student government, and I love the military, but we'll see." And I stayed in longer. But he's one of my best friends. He's a phenomenal entrepreneur who sold his first company for like $80 million. He's just a phenomenal person and a man of faith. And so, I stayed in with the public service route, and now just figuring out ways to help my daughter and son go to college and hopefully follow our footsteps in public service.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of your public service experiences after the military?
Yeah, listen, first, in the military, for me, I would never have been a U.S. congressman or help run the Army in the Pentagon if it wasn't for the Army. I mean, it opened up so many doors for me, and doors that I didn't even know about, right? So for me, it was, to compete for a scholarship for folks from Notre Dame and Georgetown and Harvard, and to win, right? That to me gave me like a source of confidence at a young age when I was a skinny kid that was really fast in ice hockey and tough, but I had bad acne and I was still finding myself. So it opened up so many doors for me, and then to go on, starting at age 17 in college, and then going in the Army, and then the Army companies eventually to go to law school and then to go teach at West Point. I'm just super grateful, and then going to combat when our nation was attacked twice. But then that next chapter of political public service, I was an independent my whole life, Hannah. I didn't think, it wasn't like I wasn't a political science major,
Mhm.
uh, or journalism, right? And I'm doing both, meaning, I was a U.S. member of Congress from what's now the Pennsylvania First District, which is all of Bucks County, so just north of Philadelphia, and then to go serve in the Pentagon, and now work for, Yahoo Finance and Fox and others. Like it's pretty cool.
I love how you describe, the military as opening up so many doors. And I think that's something that, folks may not be aware of all the many opportunities that can be accessible to you and on the other side of service. Do you have any tips or insights for veterans that are transitioning from the military, whether that's retiring or just, kind of finishing out their contract and transitioning into the civilian or public sector?
Yeah, the first, the simple adage of like plan your work and work your plan, and go left of boom. Don't wait till the last few months of your service to get on LinkedIn. I'm passionate about the transition of our brothers and sister veterans and military spouses, because this is where too many fall through the cracks. This is where you see 24% of military spouses are unemployed. So
Mhm.
Hannah, you have this phenomenal podcast and a great military family, but there's a lot of military spouses that are looking for work, and 24% of them can't find it, right? Because they're household six and they're moving every 3 years, et cetera, with PCSs, permanent change of stations. And so I'm an ambassador for what's called the US Chamber of Commerce, hiring our heroes. What is that? We help for free companies recruit veterans and military spouses or transitioning service members, and we help those same service members and veterans and military spouses get an edge up. We help them with their resumes. We help them with their LinkedIn profile. We do over 90 events a year, 60 live, 30 virtual, and it's free. It's lottie dottie, free for everybody, whether you're an employer, a company, or whether you're a veteran or a military spouse. And so we set up shop at our major events. It's major installations. We'll go. It's basically a 6-hour event. First 3 hours, we brief them on, hey, all right, when you go back home to Pennsylvania, this is what the tax rate is. Florida, this is what the tax rate is. Hey, your LinkedIn, don't use a military photo. Use a photo of you looking like a civilian. Hey, don't use military jargon. Don't use, mnemonics. Like, we call it leadership. The 7 Army values leadership, right? Loyalty, duty, honor, self-service, respect, integrity, personal courage. Right? So, sorry for going on a tangent there, but we tell them, don't use acronyms, don't use mnemonics, use common language, and don't just say what you have done. Translate it for them so they understand it. Like, when I say, "Hey, I helped lead the Army," I have to walk people through. We're a 1.3 million person organization. We have a $184 billion a year company. We would be a Fortune 2 size company if we were in the private sector, right? So again, it's incumbent on all of us to explain, when we were with America's varsity team, the Army, what it is, and how that translates. So we do that through Hiring Heroes. So you can check it out, hiringheroes.org, and find us there, or, you go to our website, which I list the stuff, patrickjmurphy.com. And so I'm passionate about it, Hannah, because, our troops who become veterans, and about 200,000 a year become veterans. and our military spouses, we are civic assets to this nation. We have so much more to give after our military service is over. So that's what I'm passionate about. I've transitioned 3 times out of the government, out of the Army, eventually then out of Congress, and then out of Pentagon. So I'm passionate about this. I try to let people know my mistakes and give them the best way forward about, planning their work and then working their plan.
That's great advice. It was over a decade ago. I attended my first Hiring Our Heroes event, made an incredible difference in my career journey. I was so relieved to know I was not the only military spouse who had degrees and couldn't get a job. And, I thought I was alone in that for so long. And Hiring Our Heroes programs, they really kind of truly tip of the spear on addressing the employment and career challenges within the military community. So really appreciate all y'all's work, knowing the impact personally of it. So
Well, you're a proud alumnus. We help out about 84,000 folks a year, which is what we did last year, 2024. But we want to help more, right? And we're getting after it. So we love the partner. So if, like, going on podcasts like yours, and spreading the goodwill, people might not heard of it. And again, it's free. It's what we call it free chicken, right? It is free with the best experts. We get the top people from LinkedIn come in, give you a brief, some tax advisors, et cetera. And again, and we're not selling nothing. We're just selling, potential opportunities. And then we bring employers in, so then you can do informational interviews with employers so they can get a feel for you and vice versa. And that's why, we've been really aggressive on trying to support things like Skill Bridge. And as you know, Skill Bridge is, basically a month to 3 months where you're a transitioning service member or military spouse now, where you can go work for a company while you're still technically part of the Department of Defense, but you go work for them to try it out and then, see if it's a good fit. And some people say, oh, well, you shouldn't do that. And listen, let me tell you, we spend over 3 months training up these young heroes to become ultimate warriors, right? We are the best fighting force in the world. The least we can do is give them a month head start on their transition out of the military. So the military, who would be responsible if they're unemployed, we have to pay their unemployment benefits, right? You don't have to pay for them. And when I was, in the Pentagon, when the president asked me to come back in and help lead that, we were spending about $1 billion a year on unemployment, or what we call UCX money, because it's the VA and the Department of Labor that is really like supposed to help them get jobs, but it's DOD that pays the bill. So I said, listen, I want our tax dollars going to our war fighters. I don't want to go pay unemployment benefits. So let's get after it and let's do these public-private partnerships. And we had a phenomenal, we quadrupled our career summits with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, et cetera. And that's why we have to continue the march to do what's necessary to take care of our brothers and sisters.
Well, Patrick, I know you were involved a few years ago with Amtrak crash. Can you tell us kind of about that experience and kind of what it represented in terms of a defining moment in your life and your career?
Yeah, Hannah, thanks for bringing up in a sense. Yeah, so roughly like 10 years ago, I was working for NBC News, and I was down interviewing the VA secretary, and before I went down there, because I had basically like a noon shot, and I live about a 2-hour train ride, from DC. I was doing CrossFit that morning at 6 a.m. class and did 21 rope climbs and all this stuff, and felt good, and went home, showered, and shaved, and I'm on that train going down. I knocked out a good interview. Was on a 7 o'clock train coming back home. I still young kids, and I've been very blessed in my life. I joke that I've had 9 lives. I was an evasion in Iraq. I lost 19 of my brothers that never made it home, and we got mortared most nights, and I got shot at a few times. And to me, I know how blessed I am. I know I've had way too many close calls in my life. Even growing up in Philadelphia, I got a gun pulled on me 3 times before I even turned 18. But on that night in May in 2015, I was on a train that unfortunately crashed over 100 miles an hour and flipped over. And so, I was knocked unconscious. A lot of the folks were in the front of the train where I was in the cafe car. We lost a naval midshipman who I met a few hours earlier in the ride. I offered him a beer, said I'm in the Army, but can I buy a beer, buddy? And And, you know, a lot of, you know, of the 8 that died, but there was also over 200 that were wounded, and including a lot of the folks, you know, in our car that flipped. So for me, I was blessed. I did what any other American trooper would do. You know, I not came to after I was not conscious, but then got the guy next to me up, and then I punched out a window and got people out of our car from the side. We were on our side at that point, and then I stayed back with the wounded and put a tourniquet on somebody, and just you know, tried to hold it down until the rescue teams came in and did what they could. And so for me, it's just one of those things where, you know, I try and teach my young kids who are both athletes, like, hey, you know, being part of the warrior class, whether you serve in uniform or not, whether you were in the military or a first responder or just a civilian, you know, you're expected, as the Bible commands us, to help your brothers and help your sisters. And that means if things bad go happen, or, you know, do you know CPR? Do you know how to render first aid? Because it's just not for law enforcement. It's not just for first responders. It's for all of us to take care of each other.
Yeah, no, that's wise words to live by. So, Patrick, I know you're involved in numerous veteran kind of focused nonprofits. And, you know, that work is incredibly impactful. You talked about hiring our heroes. You've been involved in a few others. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with those nonprofits, and maybe, you know, any advice you have for other members of the veteran community that would like to get involved in kind of shaping our future?
Sure, yeah. Listen, I'm a big champion. I try to champion my brothers and veterans. So I try to amplify their voices and some of the leaders of our generation of post 9/11 veterans specifically. But I will tell you that, you know, and it's funny because, you know, I know your podcast, you know, tipping point, you know, we're at a tipping point in our country's history because after World War II, veterans came back home and a lot of them did one of two things. A lot of them went into political public service, you know, and we had great leaders like Dwight Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy, you know, two combat veterans from World War II. You know, the first President Bush, and then his son, who also served, you know, George W. Bush. So that was, you know, that was after World War II. But a lot of them also kind of went into business. Some of those iconic global brands were World War II veterans. So you look at the largest retailer in the world. What is it? Walmart, started by Army veteran Sam Walton after World War II, age 41. You know, Comcast, largest media company in the world, started by Navy veteran Ralph Roberts. Um, and then after Vietnam, you know, people like Marine Fred Smith started FedEx. You know, I could go on and on about Enterprise Car Rental, Wendy's Restaurants, Ralph Lauren, all started by veterans. Nike, I did CrossFit this morning. I had my Nike shoes on. Phil Knight was an Army veteran. Him and Bill Bowerman. Bill Bowerman earned a Silver Star in World War II. So I say that to you, and I see we're at a tipping point now because why? That greatest generation, half those folks started their own small business, create those great iconic global brands. Our generation of Iraq, Afghanistan veterans, it's less than 5%
Yeah.
that start their own business. So I'm a venture capitalist. I've invested in over 100 veteran-owned companies. My partners and I, over $300 million to date. And then in political public service, you know, the JFKs and the Ikes of the world. And then in the Vietnam generation, you know, obviously people like John McCain. You know, I support veterans who are running for political public service. You know, and I tell some of them, like, listen, there's 600,000 elected positions in America. The top 535, like, I did it, but I got super lucky. You know, maybe you should run for a state senator, state rep first before you run for the US Congress. Sometimes it's a good move. Sometimes they should, you know, work their way up. But, you know, I try to advise them that we do need more veterans. And where we're hurting there, Hannah, is that it used to be 4 out of every 5 members of Congress were veterans. Now it's less than 1 out of every 5. So we need more veterans who will put this country first to get involved in it. So, you know, I have a pack called Taking the Hill Pack to help veterans take the hill. And I'm passionate about that way. I know a lot of people say, oh, don't talk about politics, whatever. I'm like, we need veterans to talk about politics, to get involved in political public service, to bring honor and integrity back to that profession, to represent all of us, not just the far left or far right.
Yeah. Oh, veterans are uniquely positioned to be, not only on the front lines of the battlefield, but also in business and public service. And so many of those skills and experiences transfer beautifully. We just have to get engaged in it and then
So
kind of take a step. That's great. So what kind of new developments or things in defense or national security are you most excited about now in 2025? Are there any, hot topics that kind of get your motor running on that front or that you're tracking?
yeah, listen, I mean, it's all about AI, so artificial
Mhm.
intelligence and being in front of it. And I usually invest in dual use companies
Mhm.
and some AI companies, right? And no matter what industry, what they're doing with AI to, keep our family safe and keeping our competitive edge. Cybersecurity is big for me. I was a U.S. Cyberspace Solarium commissioner. There was 14 of us, a couple of U.S. senators, a couple of members of Congress, CEOs, etc. And so I'm passionate about that. And then, of course, in healthcare and especially mental health. We lose over 20 veterans a day to suicide. And I always say veterans are civic assets, right? We're more likely to start a small business, and for that business to be successful, we're more likely to be employed. We're more likely to vote in elections, no matter what our political persuasion. And most of us are independents, like I was most of my life. But the other side of the coin, Hannah, as you know, um, veterans are 57% more likely to take their own life,
Mhm.
death by suicide. Since 9/11, we have lost 120,000 of our brothers and sisters. So I'm the honorary chair of this new initiative. It's a private sector run initiative called Face to Fight. And your folks can listen or check it out. It's called wefacetofight.org. And Face to Fight is just best in class, evidence based practices. We invest in folks who are helping our brothers and sisters to really make a dent on really the tragedy of too many of our brothers and sisters, who are desperate, who fall through the cracks and eventually take their own life. There's a lot we can do. And so people can sign up, either their company, themselves individually, it's free, and become a partner and become part of this initiative of facing the fight to make sure people know there's resources out there. I just was advising a young sailor and his family. I know his father was a Marine, and we just got him the treatment in the Philadelphia VA just an hour ago. And to me, that's how you change lives, making yourself out there. I don't work for the VA. I could be like, well, hey, I don't, call the VA. No, I gave him the exact person. We were coordinating efforts and where they should go. And we have a lot to be proud of in our country, but there's too many of our brothers and sisters that are drowning in the sea of goodwill. So hopefully we could all answer that call to do more.
Mhm. Yeah, that's an awesome initiative, Patrick. Hope folks will check it out. There's a lot of resources out there, and the veteran community is so needed. From our nation today. So can you share any insights on equipping or mentoring the next generation of leaders in the public sector or military sector? Can you share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, listen, I lecture at the U.S. War College, at the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, PA, and I teach at the Wharton Business School. In my opinion, the best business school in the world, and we make more billionaires than any other business school. But of the 850 of our Wharton students that are getting an MBA, about 10% of them are actually veterans, and that's
Wow.
pretty awesome. And it's higher than most other business schools, and most of them study in a big, beautiful building called Huntsman Hall, and that's named after John Huntsman, who is a World War II veteran. So, so I say we have a lot to be proud of when it comes to veterans in business, but part of that is helping them transition out,
Mhm.
and I'm excited about that. And one of the first year MBA students at Wharton, uh, her name's Hanny Everett, right? I knew Hanny when she was a student at Princeton University doing ROTC, and she did great work in our army. And then, I recruited her to help come to Wharton, and her and her fiance are just crushing it, right? And to me, that gives me a real sense of purpose to see other great young leaders get involved and just get after it. And so I'm passionate about that. And then, I would say to you, like Hannah, I am passionate about telling the stories of our brother and sister. So I have a weekly podcast on Yahoo Finance. Yahoo Finance is the largest business platform in the world, over 150 million views a month, 1.2 million on YouTube. People can check us out. My show is called Warrior Money. So each week we get, world's best talent on as guests, and people like Admiral Bill McRaven and Howie Hill, who's an NFL cheerleader and an Air Force veteran, and other folks that we just had Bob Parsons on. Bob Parsons, a Marine who founder of GoDaddy. And so we get these great leaders on, and we just ask them the questions that's like, hey, like what you're asking me, like, hey, what would you, impart on young people as they're transitioning out, or what would you wish you know now that you knew then? And some of it's like people say, hey, read books, lead, and learn about successful people. Make sure you're investing, and the importance of compound interest. Leverage things like the GI Bill or the VA home loan. Like little things that people might not take advantage of or even know about. We try to just give them the tricks of the trade or those life hacks that they could succeed and get a leg up.
Yeah, Patrick, your list of achievements, there's not a sector that you haven't been successful in, business.
Well, I drink a lot of coffee.
So I was wondering, kind of thinking about your multi-sector career, and is there any specific kind of mindset or skills or approach that you kind of lean on as you navigate, challenges in your career? Anything that's your go-to for kind of staying resilient and when the waters get choppy?
Yeah, well, listen, I teach at Wharton Business School, and one of my favorite books is from one of my colleagues, Angela Duckworth. She wrote the book Grit, and
Yeah.
another colleague named Adam Grant, who was a phenomenal writer, and I follow them both on social media and listen to their podcast. And but I have that growth mentality, Hannah, to be honest with you. I mean, I am learning all the time. I mean, I read the Bible, and I'm kind of a New Testament kind of guy, but where it talks about, God gave us all 2 ears but one mouth for a reason, right? I don't have all the answers. I work my tail off. I try to be a good dad. I try to be a good citizen. I love our country. I love my church. And I think we have the greatest country in the world. But part of it is understanding that even in our Constitution, that blueprint of our democracy, of our government, it talks about, three branches of government, legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch. When I taught at West Point, I used to tell my, cadets, like, hey, it's like rocks, paper, scissors. One's not more powerful than the other. They're co-equal branches of government. Democracy is messy, but it's the best system out there. But in that Constitution, in that preamble of our Constitution, it says, in order to form a more perfect union. So even then, in the preamble, it was like they were saying, hey, to form a more perfect union, we're doing this Constitution, but we're not a perfect union, right? That's why we can amend the Constitution. That's why we're in this together. We weren't perfect then. We're not perfect now. We're a great country because we're a good country, but it's not our God-given right. We got to work at it every day to make it better. And I tell people, if you're being divisive, if you're just being negative all the time, that's not what our Lord wants from you. He wants us to unite. Now, again, you got to stand for certain principles, etc. But you should be able to meet everybody and figure something in common and work with them, or figure out ways to work with them, or recognize or respect them, and treat everyone like we treated even our detainees when I was in Iraq, with dignity and respect, that they're human beings and we're all in this together. And I'm not trying to be all kumbaya type of thing, but I see, I have to recognize, I call my kids out when I'm driving to school sometimes when they hear the negative stuff, and especially during election season, well, I don't like this person or that person. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We like everybody. They're fellow Americans, right? We might not like what they do or what they fight for, what they're trying to take away, or et cetera, but we respect them that they're putting their name out there in the ballot. We respect them as Americans. Figure out a way to, if you can't say something good about someone else or find the good in someone else, you got to look yourself in the mirror. And I'm not yelling at you or yelling at anybody, but definitely not you, Hannah. But I would say to you, I think we've gotten away with that far too long. And I would just say, I try to lead by example. Like I joke about this, but I'm very proud of it. My best friend in the Army was my best friend in the U.S. Congress. And now we're in business together. And he was a Republican. I was a Democrat. but we worked on a lot of issues together. The press didn't cover a lot. You know why? Because they want the drama. They want the far left and the right. They want the infotainment and the ratings, etc. We need people who are serious, 80% down the middle, driving the ball forward for America and for our families, and not trying to just get on TV for 4 minutes a night.
Yeah, the polarized us versus them approach is, I feel like it's really, exacerbating some fault lines in our society today. I know kind of within the military community, we are a very diverse community. We're always facing, there's a litany of things that need to be fixed in our community in terms of benefits, programs, these types of things. That's something I hear a lot of from folks in the veteran community. This needs to be better, this needs to be better, this needs to be better. One thing that I was kind of thinking about when you were coming on the show is, Patrick's someone who identifies some challenges and really goes after them, like finding effective solutions. What advice would you have for folks that are, maybe they have a personal experience that something needs to be better in, the system that they're in within the military community or veteran community? They want to fix it. They don't know how. What advice or programs, what would you recommend for them as kind of a way to get involved and kind of exercise that civic engagement in a productive manner?
Yeah, I mean, part of it's digging in, right, and having that growth
Mhm.
mentality. I mean, you look at great leaders; they read every day, right? So I try to read the newspaper every day. I'm reading stuff online, but I'm trying to read a book a month, right? Which for me, I don't read a book a month on average of my life, but I'm doing it now. I just read Scott Galloway's book called The Algebra of Wealth, right? And I learned a ton. I took notes during it, right? And I go back to my notes. Why? Because I'm not a smart person, right? To me, I'm a hard worker, but it's about working hard and working smart. So you can learn, you can get mentorship through books that are out there, right? I don't know Scott Galloway, but now I feel like I know him because I listened to his podcast and I just read his book and others like that, right? So for me, I think that's important. But there's not a challenge that we have in our world today or in our military today that we can't solve if we work hard, if we use that American innovation, if we have that growth mentality and that grit, not to give up on it and to try and pay forward to make it better. So I would tell people use the resources that are out there, books, internet, etc. But part of it's digging in, identify the problem and solving it. And I think that's why, as an entrepreneur, and someone who, I mentor other, soon to be entrepreneurs. I tell them, hey, you might have a great idea on a product, et cetera. But what problem are you solving, right? Is it something that you want, or is it something that other people want? And having that empathy to understand what other people's needs and their wants are, and what the challenges that they might be facing, and how you could be part of that, solution. I think that's incredibly important to a lot of young folks and to all of us.
So looking forward, what are you most hopeful about in terms of the future of our nation?
And you can't spend like 5 minutes with these young Americans that are serving right now and not be inspired, right? So I flew across the country. I teach uh, either current soldiers or veterans their master's program in public policy. And I flew across the country to have dinner, to teach, and I flew right back because, I have my kids. And I did that because, to be in a room, with these 40 individuals who are earning their master's degree that are interested in political public service. I didn't care if they were Democrat, Republican, Independent. I care that they love our country and they were willing to be part of that solution. Some as a principal, some that they want to go maybe be candidates someday, some who wanted to be a staff member, right? And wanted to be a chief of staff or legislative assistant or communications director, et cetera. So, just walking and helping them and walking them through some of those things. So I would say, anytime I'm in front of young folks, I get inspired. I get inspired by their energy, by their drive, by their vigor. I learn from them. I have two kids, Maggie and Jack, and I learn from them every day. I'm not always the cool dad, but I'm a dad who makes them make their bed every day and believes in them and encourages them. And sometimes it's tough with them, but most times just showers them with the love that they deserve because they're pretty awesome.
So do you have any final words of advice for the audience?
Well, first, if they can follow me on social, that'd be great. I mean, my book's still on Amazon, Taking the Hill, but on social, I'm at Patrick Murphy, PA. I was Patrick Murphy. That was, as you know, in the acting secretary of the Army in the Pentagon and a congressman. There is another congressman named Patrick Murphy. He's from Florida. He's the younger, better looking version of me. But if you could follow me on social media, if you could check out Where Your Money on Yahoo Finance, wherever you get your podcast, that'd be great. But my advice to the folks that are listening is, in the Army, I rattled off earlier in the conversation the 7 Army values, right? That mnemonic leadership, loyalty, duty, self-service, honor, integrity, personal courage, respect. And I got the R mixed up. It's supposed to be the third value, and I saved to the end. But I say that because that self-service, I think sometimes we're too selfless. We're not comfortable talking about ourselves. And I tell, transitioning, but like, listen, there is no I in team, but there is an Emmy. You gotta be ready to talk about yourself and talk about yourself on what you can do for the next team that you're gonna be on. How you're the military service, whether you're a trooper or a spouse, what you've done. And then more importantly, what you can do for them. And you got to translate to them because they want teammates that are gonna kick butt and take names. They want teammates that are gonna show up on time. They want teammates that are going to put the team first over themselves. Not all the time, but especially when they can, right? And so that's what I try and tell young folks, and and that's why it's like practical advice. Like, hey, on LinkedIn, you're transitioning out. You don't have to have a military picture anymore, but put one on. You in business attire in that job that you want. In that industry that you're looking for, and follow other people. Don't just say, all right, I'm Patrick Murphy. I'm ready to get hired. Here's my stuff. Right? Who do you aspire to be? What companies do you want to work for? What industries? What geographic region of the country do you and your family want to live in? What's the tax rate in those regions? But like, do that homework, and build those relationships before you need them. Like them, try and I look at social media. There's a lot of negative parts of it, but I get on every day, at least for a little bit, because it is a force multiplier. So if people are listening, you want to connect with me, Patrick J. Murphy, just check. You don't have to bring me a note, just on LinkedIn. Just, yep, I want to connect with you. As long as you have a picture, I'll accept it, because I don't want random robots. As so to me, that I would say that's one piece of advice. Make these relationships. What I teach at Wharton, I tell these young Americans, I say, your net worth, sorry, your network is your net worth. Your network is your net worth. So build those networks, invest in them, like people's stuff, comment on their stuff, follow people, build with people. Don't say, hey, can I get a job? Can I meet with you 15 minutes? I want to get a job. No. Ask advice, ask them, learn about their thing, go on Wikipedia, go on other things, learn about the company before you're meeting with them. So when you're there, it shows that you did a little bit of homework. You look at where they went to college, you find some connection with them, but you're building this relationship that you can cultivate, and that can help you. And I tell young marketers, I say, if you go ask someone for advice, you might get a job. If you go and ask someone for a job, you're going to get advice. So if you're looking for a job, go ask for advice. Say, hey, do you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes to do a quick Zoom or a phone call? Most times, especially veterans who want to give back, that have that servant's heart, they'll give back like I would and others. But you do that, and each rate works out pretty well.
Yeah, that's great, great guidance, Patrick. I'm super inspired now. So appreciate.
Listen, I appreciate you putting yourself out there. Listen, I know, I'm sure you had doubters. Well, you're doing a podcast. What? Why? There's already. Hey, listen, yeah, there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of TV shows, a lot of, right? But you're passionate about it. You're good at it, right? So, you get people to open up and talk about things and get emotional, and so that resonates with your audience. And so I appreciate what you do. It's really important that we're all in this together and we amplify other voices in our community, and don't let the haters hate. Like, there's gonna be people that are gonna attack you and whatever, and your backdrop this or whatever that. Like, I do these videos called Warrior Wednesdays, where, because I'm really passionate about the best thing to combat your mental health is stay physically active, because it's tied with dopamine and serotonin. So I do these quick 60, 90-second videos about, hey, it's Warrior Wednesday, what are you doing to work out, blah blah blah. And I had people comment like, man, you got to do legs more and your friends are too skinny. I'm like, man, it's not about my calf muscles, brother. Like, and if you're hitting me on my calf muscles, you got to look in the mirror. And sometimes it's joking and I think it's funny, right? So I don't mind. Sometimes it's mean. Like, and I'm like, and like, don't be a mean girl. Don't be a mean dude. Like, right? Just be a good person, pay forward, and amplify others that are paying it forward and that are positive lights in our communities and for our country, because we sure as hell need it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing your insights, your experiences. I know your contributions have not only impacted so many lives already, but continue to do so with your work today. So,
Yeah, well, I was a co-author of the Post and I'm in GI Bill. So if you or any of your kids or any of your listeners out there are using the GI Bill, you see me in this, you owe me a Miller Lite when you see me at the bar, because I wrote that and saved you hundreds of thousands of dollars probably. So God bless. Hannah, thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
oh, well, and thanks to our listeners. We appreciate you tuning into this episode of Tipping Spears with Hannah Becker. We hope this conversation has sparked new ideas and challenged the way you think about our future. So don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week with a new episode.